Previously unseen images, never before seen on social media, have just surfaced. They confirm what many suspected, but no one could prove with such clarity. Jeffrey Epstein was not just an acquaintance of Donald Trump. He was an honored guest at his wedding. Stay with me, because what you are about to see is not just history. It's the center of a political battle that could change everything. Before continuing, leave a like and comment below what you think about the Jeffrey Epstein case.
And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news, a CNN exclusive tonight out front. KFile has unearthed photos of Jeffrey Epstein that we've never seen, and they shed new light on his relationship with President Trump. The revelations come as Trump is under fire from his own base for his Justice Department's handling of the so-called Epstein files. Trump has tried, of course, to distance himself from Epstein every which way, but one of the photos that KFile found confirms that Epstein actually attended Donald Trump's wedding to Marla Maples. And this is the proof. Again, this has never been published before, so this is a new image. You haven't seen it out there on X or anything like that. This is the proof that Epstein attended Trump's wedding at the Plaza Hotel in New York. And in the photo, what you see is Epstein entering the Plaza Hotel. The wedding date of this is December 20th, 1993.
Before we get to the files themselves, what has been released, what has been withheld, and who is making these decisions, let's establish the basis of what the public record on Trump and Epstein already contained before the photographs. Because context matters here, the KFile photographs did not emerge in a vacuum. They emerged from a body of documented evidence that has been accumulating for decades, and understanding what was already known is essential to understanding why what is happening in 2026 is not a new story. It is the latest chapter in a very long story. Jeffrey Epstein was a financier of virtually obscure origins who, throughout the 1980s and 1990s, became a constant figure in the high society of New York and Palm Beach. He lived in a house in Manhattan on East 71st Street, considered the largest private residence in New York City. He owned a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands that prosecutors would later describe as the site of a systematic sex trafficking operation. His network of associates included Ghislaine Maxwell, a British socialite, who was eventually convicted on 5 federal charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Epstein was arrested in 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges. In August of that year, he died in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. The official verdict was suicide by hanging. 2 guards on duty that night were later charged with falsifying records. Surveys conducted in the years since consistently show that the vast majority of Americans do not believe the official version of his death. Conspiracy theories have never completely dissipated, and this persistent public doubt about what really happened is part of the political atmosphere in which everything that follows takes place. Now, the publicly documented record of Trump's relationship with Epstein before the 2026 photographs. In 2002, Trump was quoted in a profile of Epstein in New York Magazine. His words, "Epstein was a fantastic guy and a lot of fun to be around." And Trump added that they even say he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are quite young. This statement accompanied Trump in every news report that covered this story for over 20 years. It was never retracted, and Trump never substantially explained it. In 1992, NBC footage of a party at Mar-a-Lago captured Trump and Epstein laughing together while watching women dancing in the background. These images briefly went viral after Epstein's arrest in 2019. Flight logs that surfaced during Ghislaine Maxwell's trial documented that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet, the plane that became known after Epstein's arrest as the Lolita Express, at least 7 times between 1993 and 1997. The flights were between Palm Beach and New York. None of them went to Little St. James, Epstein's island. Getty Images photographs documented Trump and Epstein together at the Victoria's Secret Angels party in New York in 1997. And a photograph from February 26, 1997, taken at Mar-a-Lago, became perhaps the most widely circulated image in this story. Trump and Epstein posing together, both smiling, in what appears to be the body language of 2 men who feel comfortable in each other's company. That was the existing record when this week began. Trump's public stance on all of this has been consistent in its direction, though not always in its details. He said in 2019 that he hadn't spoken to Epstein in 15 years. He said he wasn't a fan of his. He said he knew him the same way everyone in Palm Beach knew him. He described having Epstein ejected from Mar-a-Lago after discovering that Epstein had made an inappropriate approach to the teenage daughter of a member, an allegation that journalists and lawyers for Epstein's victims have carefully examined and concluded to be a significantly more complex account than the one presented by Trump. Now, add the 1993 wedding photograph to that record. The photograph doesn't transform the picture in a legal sense. It adds a piece of data to a pattern that was already documented. But it does something specific that the existing record didn't. It places Epstein not in a large public social event, a party, a fashion show, a charity gala, but in an intimate personal celebration. Trump's wedding was a circus in terms of public spectacle. The tabloids called it the wedding of the century, but the guest list was still a guest list. Epstein was on it.
Well, yeah, it is. Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993 was dubbed the wedding of the century by the media at the time. And although we know that Trump and Epstein were friends during this period, this is really the first time that it's actually been reported that Trump invited Epstein to his wedding. This is, we should note, more than a decade before those first allegations of sex trafficking against Epstein. But as you know,
before seeing photos, Andrew, I know you also found some video of Trump and Epstein that was from later of them talking that has also never surfaced before. What's that?
Let me state the structural problem as plainly as it can be stated, because it tends to get lost inside the details of redactions and serial numbers and evidence logs. The man who was invited to Donald Trump's 1993 wedding, Jeffrey Epstein, is the subject of a federal investigation whose files are now being managed, released, redacted, and withheld by a Justice Department staffed with people appointed by and answerable to Donald Trump. The files from that investigation include FBI interview records in which Trump himself is named as an alleged abuser. Those specific records are among the ones that did not appear in the public release. The department that withheld them is now conducting a review of whether they were improperly withheld. The review is being conducted by the same department that apparently withheld them. The Deputy Attorney General overseeing the review was, until recently, Trump's personal criminal defense attorney. This is not a matter of political interpretation. It is a description of a structural conflict of interest so direct and so complete that it is difficult to construct an oversight mechanism that can function through it. This is what Hillary Clinton, in her testimony before the House Oversight Committee on Thursday, called a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. Clinton appeared before the committee after receiving a subpoena, a Republican-controlled committee investigating Democratic connections to Epstein. Her husband, former President Bill Clinton, flew on Epstein's plane 16 times. There are photographs of him with Epstein and with Maxwell at various events. His spokesman has said the flights took place before Epstein's crimes were publicly known, and that he had no knowledge of or involvement in those crimes. These are facts that genuinely warrant scrutiny. Neither Clinton has been accused by law enforcement of criminal wrongdoing related to Epstein. But here is the political and procedural question that Clinton raised in her testimony, and that Democratic members of the committee and some legal analysts have echoed. If the operative standard for being subpoenaed before the House Oversight Committee is having documented contact with Epstein or appearing in the Epstein files, why are only Democrats receiving subpoenas? Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's interactions with Epstein were, according to documents in the DOJ release, described in ways that his own public statements do not fully square with. He has not been subpoenaed. Other prominent Republicans who appear in the released files have not been subpoenaed. The committee with subpoena power has directed that power at the Clintons. CNN's political analysis published in the same week makes the argument that the Republican majority may have miscalculated here. The Clinton subpoenas have added oxygen to the Epstein story at precisely the moment the White House was trying to let it quiet down. The contrast between who is being questioned and who is not is being noticed and reported. And there is a procedural irony embedded in the Republican strategy. If the precedent being established is that former presidents' documented connections to Epstein require public congressional testimony, that precedent will not apply exclusively to Democrats. Trump's documented connections to Epstein are more extensive and more varied than Bill Clinton's. The photographs, the flight logs, the 2002 New York Magazine quote, the wedding invitation, these are a more sustained and more intimate record of proximity than 16 flights on a plane. And the additional factor that does not apply to the Clintons is this. Trump currently controls the institution that is determining what the public sees from the federal investigation of Epstein's crimes. That asymmetry is the core of Clinton's argument that the investigation is a cover-up designed to protect Trump rather than to get accountability for Epstein's victims. Whether or not you accept her characterization, the structural reality she is pointing to is not a political spin. It is a description of who has institutional power over the documentary record. Now let me turn to the public's response to all of this because it is itself a significant data point. A Reuters Ipsos poll conducted this month found that 75% of Americans believe the government is hiding information about Epstein's supposed clients, including 49% who say it definitely is. A CNN poll found 67% said the government was intentionally withholding information that should be released. These numbers did not appear out of nowhere. They reflect a pattern of disclosure behavior that, evaluated from the outside, has been consistent in one direction: more obscurity rather than less, more inconsistency in official explanations, more gaps between what was promised and what was delivered. Trump initially lobbied against a bill to release the Epstein files at all. He relented when it became clear Congress would pass the bill with a veto-proof majority. The files were released. They contained significant redaction failures that exposed victims. They apparently omitted FBI interview records that specifically concern allegations against Trump. The official explanation shifted from full compliance to, we are reviewing whether records were improperly withheld within the span of days. Trump told reporters in July 2025 that he had not been informed his name was in the files. It was later reported that Attorney General Pam Bondi had in fact told him exactly that in May of that year, months before his public denial. Each of these is a discrete, documented event. Taken together, they describe an administration that has handled the Epstein file release in a way that has, at every juncture where the road forked, chosen the option that resulted in less transparency rather than more. That may be coincidence. Institutions handling large, complex releases under political pressure make errors. Bureaucracies sometimes fail to coordinate. Redaction processes applied to 3.5 million documents will produce mistakes, but the specific documents that are missing are not random. They are the FBI interview records of a woman who accused Trump. The redaction failures exposed victims rather than protecting them. The official explanation changed after scrutiny, not before. And the man making decisions about what gets labeled a duplicate, privileged, or part of an ongoing investigation is the man who took the job after serving as Trump's personal criminal defense attorney. These are the observable facts. The inference you draw from them is yours to make. But making an informed inference requires knowing what the facts actually are. And that is what this episode has been about. Let me close with the photograph, because I want to return to where we started, with the specific kind of evidence that is hardest to manage. Daffod Jones, the photographer who took the image of Epstein entering the Trump Maples wedding, told CNN this week that he recognized Epstein from an event 2 months earlier where Epstein had handed him a business card. He snapped the picture because Epstein struck him as interesting. He said he wished he had taken more photographs of Epstein with Trump that night. The negatives were lost. What survived was a contact sheet, a small, intermediate artifact of photography, not the final prints, not the curated record. A contact sheet sitting in an archive and a separate image buried in a Getty database and raw, unaired footage from a 1999 fashion show. Andrew Kaczynski's team at KFile found these not through a leak or a breach. They found them by going through archival material systematically and carefully, By doing the work of examining the record for what it actually contains, rather than for what anyone wanted it to contain, history survives in the places no one thought to look. A contact sheet, a frame of raw footage, a negative that was lost but whose print was not. In December 1993, Jeffrey Epstein walked through the front door of the Plaza Hotel in a tuxedo to attend the wedding of Donald Trump. A photographer whose path had crossed Epstein's 2 months earlier recognized him and took a picture. That picture sat in an archive for 33 years, and now, in February 2026, the man whose wedding Epstein attended controls the Justice Department that is deciding, file by file, record by record, what the public is permitted to know about what Jeffrey Epstein did and who was part of it. That is not a political argument. That is a description of the situation. Here is what the documented record shows, stated without editorial inflation. CNN's KFile published photographs confirming that Jeffrey Epstein attended Donald Trump's 1993 wedding to Marla Maples. These images were found through systematic archival research and had never been published before. Trump denied the photographs had any significance. His response to CNN's call was to dismiss the reporting and hang up. The photographs exist within a larger documented record of sustained close proximity between Trump and Epstein through the 1990s, flight logs, party photographs, the 2002 New York Magazine quote, and the 1997 Mar-a-Lago photograph. The Trump Justice Department released more than 3.5 million Epstein-related files in January 2026 following a congressional mandate. The release contained significant redaction failures that exposed rather than protected victims. It also omitted more than 90 FBI witness interview records that were listed in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial evidence log. Among the omitted records, 3 of 4 FBI interviews with a woman who alleged she was abused by Epstein starting at age 13 and who also accused Trump of sexual assault. Those allegations are unverified. Trump denies them. The DOJ stated initially that the release was fully compliant with the law. It subsequently stated it was reviewing whether records had been improperly withheld. The Deputy Attorney General overseeing the review was Trump's personal criminal defense attorney before taking the role. A Reuters Ipsos poll found 75% of Americans believe the government is hiding information about Epstein's associates. That number has been rising since the release began. The House Oversight Committee, controlled by Republicans, issued subpoenas to Hillary and Bill Clinton for their documented connections to Epstein. It has not issued subpoenas to prominent Republicans who appear in the files. These are the facts as of February 27, 2026. The question this situation raises is not primarily about what happened in 1993 at the Plaza Hotel. It is about what is happening now. About whether a Justice Department structurally entangled with the subject of its own document release is capable of conducting a genuine and complete disclosure, and about what the mechanism of accountability is supposed to be when the institution responsible for oversight is controlled by the person with the most direct personal interest in the outcome. I'm Matthew John Turner. The question I want you to think about, and I mean this as a genuine structural question rather than a rhetorical one, is this. What does an independent investigation of the Epstein files actually look like at this point, given the institutional landscape we're operating in? Who has the authority, the independence, and the access to actually examine whether the omissions were deliberate, and what recourse exists if the review is conducted by the same apparatus that produced the omissions? Leave your thinking in the comments, not reactions. Analysis. What does the mechanism of accountability look like from where you're standing? I'll be watching what comes next. You should be too. There is a specific kind of historical evidence that governments find particularly difficult to manage, not testimony. Testimony can be discredited, delayed, or buried in procedural language, not reports. Reports can be redacted, reclassified, or tagged as privileged and quietly removed from public databases. Not even flight logs, though those have proven durable. Photographs are different. A photograph does not require a witness who can be pressured. It does not require a document custodian who can be directed to withhold. It exists as a physical or digital artifact, often distributed across multiple archives simultaneously. A contact sheet in a photographer's files, a negative in a media organization's vault, a frame buried in raw footage that was never broadcast. History survives in the gaps between what powerful people knew to look for and what they didn't. In late February 2026, CNN's investigative unit KFile published photographs that no one had seen before. One was taken by a society photographer named Dafydd Jones at the Plaza Hotel in New York City on December 20th, 1993. It shows Jeffrey Epstein, at that point a financier with a business card reading financial advisor, not yet charged with any crime, entering the reception of Donald Trump's wedding to Marla Maples. A second image from the Life magazine archive shows Epstein in the background of a group photograph at the wedding itself. His face is visible. He is present because someone put his name on the guest list. The White House called the photographs out-of-context frame grabs of innocuous videos and pictures of widely attended events. Weddings are not widely attended events. A guest list is a document of deliberate choice. You do not end up at someone's wedding because you are passing by. That distinction between an acquaintance and someone you invite to the most significant personal celebration of your life is the fulcrum on which this entire story turns. And it turns in 2026 with a particular weight because the man in that photograph at the Plaza Hotel now controls the Justice Department that is deciding, in real time, what the American public is allowed to know about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and who enabled them. Let's build this carefully, because this story has layers that the speed of the news cycle tends to collapse, and they need to be kept separate if any of it is going to make sense.